Шановні колеги, українські медіа.
Dear colleagues, Ukrainian Crisis Media Center continued its work, and now we are going to speak about development strategy for state-owned banks. I give the floor to Artem Shevalev, Deputy Minister of Finance of Ukraine, and Yuriy Blaschuk, advisor to the Minister of Finance of Ukraine on bank issues. Thank you very much. I want to outline briefly the main idea and what we wanted to present to all banking community. I speak about the document that was adopted on Thursday by the Cabinet of Ministers. It is on reforming of state-owned banks and sector. We call it strategy for state-owned banks, but all banks have their own strategies that is adopted by the board of the bank. But let's say that we are speaking about banking sector. This document is very important due to several reasons. First of all, we got accustomed that we are speaking about the problems that continued for a long time, about 20 years. We have many problems in oil and gas industry, and those corruption scandals and flows that went through this state-owned company. And we speak about those problems that are in the sector of banking. And we see many developments in this sector. And in the last year and a half, we try to work differently, more transparent, but at the same time we see a colossal problem with which state-owned banks faced, and these problems connected with the political and administrative interference in the previous years. So we proposed a strategy that envisages the introduction of new principles of corporate governance of state-owned bank, and it envisages appropriate changes to the current legislation and bylaws. And also we wanted that the state banks worked according to the best world practices and in the sphere of corporate governance, and it envisages the creation of independent supervisory boards and new cooperation of board with the supervision boards and also with the stakeholders. And firstly, we are speaking that maximum efficiency can be achieved through privatization like in other spheres of Ukrainian economy. That's why the strategy envisages till the 2018 this is the first step, and further we envisage a more deep privatization. First, this will be the biggest state banks, and then this will be the second stage, more privatization in the sphere. And about other banks, we believe that here there will be some privatization of these banks in about 2017, and until the end of 2017 the state won't have any shares in any banks except two largest banks. And as to operational focus in the state banks, we are speaking about the fact that their identifications should be based on competitive grounds of these enterprises. We don't want to administratively introduce this or that, but we see that historically Shadbank has many advantages and competitive ability in the small and medium-sized business and in retail, where they should focus their operational priorities. Ukreksimbank, as it is evident from its name, has advantages in corporate sector, especially in export-oriented activities and corporate clients. And we believe that the team and historic advantages and connections with different international institutions, these are all advantages for this bank to work in this direction. As to the privatization, this is an issue that is very important and raises a lot of question. And the experience of Eastern European countries show that international organizations such as EBRD and International Corporation, they play a big role in privatization of the banks, and it increases the value of these banks, and it results in further IPO or through other procedures to return more money to the state budget. And I think these are the main principles, the main focus that I wanted to do in our strategy, and the strategy was adopted, and also a law was adopted to introduce changes in the Article 7 on banking activity that envisages the change in corporate governance, and also the change in the principle of formation of boards. And also there was an order of the Cabinet of Ministers on the order of the formation of these boards, and it will come into effect soon. And I give the floor to my colleague, and then we will answer questions. Thank you. I would like to say why I'm here. I'm Yuriy Blaschuk, advisor to the Minister of Finance of Ukraine on bank issues. What I wanted to say is that till the strategy was adopted, it was a long time before the strategy was adopted, and the specialists say that this started about 15 years ago. Why it became to do? Why it is that we formed a working group that developed the strategy of in the banking sphere, and I won't go into detail. The development of our society provided a ground for the creation of the strategy, and the banking sector and top management, Ministry of Finance and government, they realized the importance of these changes. And it was interesting to look at these changes and follow the events. And the first stage was 9 months ago, when Artem Valentinovich, as a leader of our group, he gathered us, and there was an evolution in this issue, starting from the position of keen leer of some participants who were afraid to lose something, to the understanding of these changes and the importance of these changes. The key changes, Artem Valentinovich told us about the strategy and the focus of activity. The main idea is to make management independent of other factors, to separate the activity. And here I see that we found a compromise decision, but I believe that this is a decision that is the most vulnerable one, that needs a lot of attention. To preserve the independence of supervisory boards. And maybe if we succeed in this, it will be good for the realization of our strategy that concerns the corporate governance. And I'm very glad that this happens in the banking sector, because banking sphere in 20 years showed the best examples of corporate governance. And Western banks, they brought here their culture, and we also have Ukrainian banks who reached good results in the disclosure of information and providing the information and corporate strategy and corporate culture, and the key advantages of the development. That's why I believe that it is important that we include in the first stage in the banking system a very leading international experts who will help us to improve corporate culture and corporate governance on the whole. Thank you. If you allow me, I will tell several words, because many people think that it's not interesting, because we see that our situation is volatile, and you know the situation here in Kiev, and we heard that corporate changes in Naftogaz Ukraine company. You remember about crediting from EBRD when the plan of actions was adopted on changes in corporate governance, and this was a credit for 300 million, and now we have further steps in development. And why is it important? And we believe that civil society and journalists, we hope for their support, because in Verkhovna Rada there will be definitely very serious opposition will be created to these ideas. But we ask ourselves whether the state is an effective manager. And we see not many examples when the state is effective manager. And the management should be effective and bring some economic results. And we want to rearrange the system. We want to have a independent corporate management of the state bank that will be responsible for results. And there won't be any artificial situation. We want to have a system to divide, to make banks independent from political influence. And we expect from this independent manager, we expect to get results from this management, to get financial, economic results. And the role of the banks is important in the growth, economic growth of Ukraine, and also they should show financial results. The state owns this property, and the state should get dividends that will be introduced to the state budget. And I am, as a moderator, I would like to ask a question. You said that there will be some opposition in Verkhovna Rada, some people will oppose this. So maybe when we speak about the interests of Ukrainians, you said that they say that people are deprived from state guarantees, because in a shared bank the deposits are guaranteed by the state, and people in small villages, they through this optimization of this network of a shared bank, they to improve corporate governance. And what will happen in people in small places? Could you briefly tell us about it, in order not to create the grounds for speculations. As to guarantees of the state banks, if we are speaking about Shadbank, we don't speak about immediate cancellation of these guarantees. We understand clearly that today this guarantee is a factor of stability in the system, and at the same time we understand that this guarantee, the full state guarantee, is not compatible with the full privatization of Shadbank. And this cancellation and outflow of 100% guarantee will be connected with privatization. And we should understand, firstly, that until state is the majoritarian stakeholder of the bank, despite availability of this guarantee on deposits, this bank is de facto, the state takes this responsibility. So every problem that can arise in the bank, in the state-forming bank like Exim Bank, the state is responsible for the financial stability of the banking system. And as to the optimization of the network and these people, for example, in the villages that should get the money, maybe it's too any person is a client, and for any bank these people are clients, and to provide a service to a client is the task of the bank, and it should be done in any case, and it is of interest to the bank. It is part of their work, and optimization do not lead to the deprivation of people from villages or towns from banking services. This is impossible if there's a competition in the banking sector. Believe me, from my experience, I see that in Europe, if there are some structural changes of big banks, even in commercial banks, there can be some requests and claims that in some villages the offices of these banks were closed. But this process is going on. But if someone leaves, someone else, some other bank will go to the market and take this place. So we shouldn't be bothered by this, because everyone will be covered by banking services. Do you have some questions, please? Sergei Zhlebetsky, Information Agency, Ukrainian News. The question to Artem. Artem, as I know, in the statute of EBRD, there is a condition that the bank cannot be cannot enter in this without the share with a share of state funds. Will EBRD buy the shares of these banks? Yes, there's some specific issues. EBRD have special expertise in privatization and pre-privatization and privatization processes. And in Romania, Poland, Bulgaria, and EBRD took part in the preparation to privatization, or in the first step in privatization in the most countries of the Eastern Europe. And as to Shadbank and Exim Bank, the procedures were limited by legislation, but we now can only speak about corporate governance. As to pre-privatization or privatization steps, this is a different issue, and we should make some legislation changes first. Thank you. Do you have other questions? So I have a question. Further steps in the realization of the strategy. So there's a draft law. Is it going to be introduced to the parliament? Do you have some preconditions for these actions? And what is the mechanics? And can you explain this? And what is the further step in controlling? And what, according the draft law was adopted together with the strategy on last Thursday, and it is in the Cabinet of Ministers and will be registered in the Verkhovna Rada, and we will speak with deputies, and we address the representatives of civil society and professional organizations to join this work, and we will move further. Do you have forecast about the session? When will it happen? What session will it be? It's very difficult to forecast at the moment. We have one more question. Artem, Radovid Bank, what will it be? Will it be liquidated? What will happen to it? And all the small banks all the banks will be privatized, and as to smaller banks, this is Radovid, Obrer, Derzem Bank, the issue is solved, and now this is a legal procedure how state will act. These banks will be privatized, of course. And they have questions. We will end our press briefing, and we will be waiting on further news from you, and we will join the discussion in the framework of coalition. Thank you and goodbye.